Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp are back online after they had crashed for several hours on Monday. Now, via Skype, I'm joined by Nashilongo Gervasius, who is the technology policy analyst, to analyze that interruption that affected millions of users worldwide. Good morning, Nashilongo, and thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, and good morning to you, Alago, and the viewers of the NBC. Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. Nashilongo, I must say most of us were freaking out yesterday. Can you please tell us how the outage affected local subscribers?
I can just imagine. I think all of us were, freaking out or
Yes.
just worried about the general outing, and I think that's the feeling for a lot of subscribers here in Namibia, but also generally in Africa, because as you know, many people regard Facebook, especially primarily Facebook, as the internet. There's been a number of research that has been carried out in this, in this regard that indicates that many people and many users of the internet, their first point of contact to the internet has been Facebook in particular. So Facebook in itself has been regarded or seen as the internet. And so for a number of users on the African continent, and I hope you have a minute here, if I can just reflect on some of the statistics. For instance, we know in Namibia there's like 800,000 users of social media, and I think about just close to that number, like 787,000, if I want to believe, are primarily social media users via Facebook. And that's literally almost the same. I mean, that reflects on the continent usage of social media. For instance, for the whole of Africa, 255 million subscribers of Facebook. So those numbers are quite close. And a lot of people uses these platforms, especially Facebook and its related platforms, for for a number of reasons, for businesses, for organizing, for marketing, for literally, everything. And this is not just for the African continent. It's everywhere. I mean, you saw yesterday, especially on Twitter, we saw, users from India, users from everywhere, literally just, expressing how hopeless they are not being able to get in contact with families and relatives in hospitals in other parts of the world. So that is the sort of impact that this social media giant has the world over. That and also it speaks generally to our dependency on these platforms. Um,
Yes.
how everything almost stood yesterday
Yes.
because of what we use it for, and the rest. Yes.
Nashilongo, now, usually when we have disruptions with these applications, it's usually just for an hour or so. But this time around, it took very long. Why is it that the social media giant could not get back the stream online faster?
Honestly, it could be very challenging to get to the understanding. But if we have to rely on what Facebook have, for instance, reflected on this morning, especially what Mark Zuckerberg said was that there's been 40 configurations on its routers, and that has caused the outage in general. But also other reports, for instance, that we're seeing from Al Jazeera, but also supported by other platforms and the rest, has been indicating that there's been a domain name systems, which is the DNS configuration, and that might have been changed. And I think all the reports that I've actually come across, at least the credible ones, are pointing to this fact that there's been configurations that might have not been done properly at the DNS system. But But obviously, there's been a lot of other things interesting happening around Facebook at this time. For instance, we saw, I think earlier this week, if it's not late last week, that whistleblower that came out to say that Facebook is not doing their work, and that has been obviously also a lot of concerns for a number of years in regards to how the platforms and the politics of the platforms and also the economic aspects of
Nashilongo,
it.
if I can just come in there, the whistleblower is a bad timing, hey, for Facebook. I mean, for people yesterday going on to online to search why is Facebook not working, and all of the things that are popping up are these negative reports about Facebook. It's definitely bad timing for the company, right?
Indeed, that is bad timing, and of course, Facebook has been asked a number of times by especially the U.S. Senate and senators, just asking about its transparencies, asking about their roles in driving misinformation. There's been so many reports, so perhaps it is bad timing, but obviously, all of these issues have been oncoming, and so to a certain extent, there is no surprise. Possibly, the surprise is really just with the coincidence with this whistleblower coming up and the DNS being largely down for a longer period in the platform's history of more than 20 years.
Very well, Nashilongo. Now, we are unfortunately running out of time, but just briefly, what is your advice to Namibians when it comes to alternatives, perhaps, to Facebook platforms?
Sure. I think the alternative is really just that, these platforms and the internet. There's so much things we are able to do beyond the social media network platforms. Yes, they are very good to enhance our lives. They give us opportunities to engage, to add to the public discourses and others. But there's other ways of connecting. If you remember earlier this year, there was that talk of Telegram or the issues of privacy with WhatsApp, and a lot of people started, moving over to Telegram and another platform. I got out of my head right now. And even then, I mean, for those of us who are still in the groups in Telegrams and Signal, there isn't much conversation happening. The economic aspect of what people are doing, for instance, on WhatsApp, isn't being reflected there. So it is perhaps the time that we really get to look at
All right.
these
Well,
platforms as having owners and find alternatives to engage in. Yeah.
thank you very much, Nashilongo. It was such a pleasure engaging on this topic with you.
Thank you, Elawa, and thanks for having me.
Well, that was Nashilongo Gervasius talking to us about the outage of Facebook platforms yesterday.